Mark.
Okay, it looks like we're on the air.
How you doing, Mark?
Good, man. Good. And you?
Good. Exhausted from, well, we had a hurricane come through around here. I think it's still slapping us. Yeah, it came right up underneath the state of Florida and rolled over Cuba and the Keys and out into the Gulf. And supposedly it's been pointing back at Tampa again, but all I've seen is crappy weather from it, which, it's a new motorcycle.
I thought you were talking about Joe Biden there and the elections.
Oh, that? Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what happens because now, I tell you what, Trump ain't going away easy. He's just not going to walk out the door and say, "Okay, you got me." He's gonna fight and cry like a baby to the very end.
Yeah.
And
what's going to be interesting is after the 20th of January, if it's quite clear, that he's been superseded, is that Twitter might disable his account. Because if you keep breaching, he's apparently had special privilege because he's president for the erroneous information that keeps going up there. And if you breach it so many times, if a regular Joe like you and me would have had our account disabled for spreading false.
I think that I don't think Twitter should be doing anything. I mean, I don't think it's their job to censor or warn anybody about anything. Their platform's open. You can get on out in there and you can call every person you want a fuckface and they're not going to get rid of you. So why is it that they can single out, So
but the thing is, you can't.
This isn't a pro-Trump thing. I'm just saying I don't think
totally.
If Twitter's going to be what Twitter has been, then Twitter needs to stay the fuck out of it.
But they can't, because then people bring legal cases against them. And this is what's been happening to both Facebook and Twitter.
No, but they had immunity from all that stuff because of the nature of the platform.
They do have immunity anymore.
Yeah, they had immunity from that stuff. They won that a long time ago when it first came out, which is actually something that I can't remember which party, I don't know if it's the Democrats or the Republicans, have been wanting to repeal because, they're pretty much, obviously, I mean, if you look at anything that Trump tweets, regardless of the validity of it, there's like 9,000 comments.
Yeah.
And most of them are negative. People calling him a fuckhead, you're a dickwad. I mean, just the nastiest crap you can think of being spewed back at him. So if they're not going to censor all these people, then, why would they censor him? It just seems like they shouldn't. They shouldn't be censoring anybody. I mean, you know what? It's not like people don't know the guy. I mean, we're all adults, so we can make our own decision, But obviously, Twitter is run by a bunch of liberals also, so they see everything through a filter. So they're deciding that something is non-factual. Well, there's half the people in the country that believe it is factual.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So who's to say what's factual, what isn't factual?
Valid. Prashant, welcome.
Him claiming that at the end of these legal proceedings, he'll be president. Well, you can't say that's factual or non-factual at this point.
Yeah.
We don't know. You just don't know. Let me pop up.
I think statistically is what the people are saying. Debbie, welcome. Shiva, Amandra, Lorenus, how are you guys? Good to have you with us today as Steve was talking about this cyclone, tornado, whatever you want to call it, went through his region. I just made a smart comment that was that Joe Biden. But, and that got Steve on a rant.
In this part of the world, they're called hurricanes.
Hurricanes, okay. Yep. I think they call them the typhoons in the Pacific.
Yeah, typhoons are Pacific, but over here we're hurricanes.
Okay.
Tornadoes are, I think, above land, right?
Okay. We've just had a real weird scenario of storms go through because it's now spring here. Yeah. And one of the towns in New Zealand got like a meter of water go through it and so damaged a whole bunch of property 2 days ago. So it is weird weather at the moment.
A meter? What a bunch of wimps.
A meter deep, man. Like most houses, that puts them all underwater.
New Orleans gets 2-3 meters, several times a year.
Where's this?
New Orleans.
Yeah, but they're designed for it. They're set up. They got banks and shit.
Yeah, I guess, which is pretty crazy. Oh, so ISV Connected seems to be spinning up here pretty good. We had our call here a week or so ago with the preliminary inaugural advisory board, which of course
Yep.
you're on, and
Yep.
Rick McCutcheon is on it, and Jason Gumpert from MS Dynamics World is on it, and Dana Wilmer is on it. He wasn't able to make the call, but
Mm-hmm.
that call, we decided to make a few changes to that site that I had, hoped to at least be able to pay for itself, and instead we decided that it would be better if we made it free. So now I'm no longer, now I'm actually funding the site. So,
Exactly.
but the good news is, since I'm not making
Had a
any
massive
money on
uptick.
it anymore, it just became an MVP contribution since I'm not making money on it anymore.
Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we got, I don't know, 75, 80 people have signed up that are, it's ISV focused. So if you're not an ISV,
Yeah.
you don't want to waste your time, you won't care. But if you are an ISV, you're thinking about being one, good spot to go and hang around with people that are really talking just ISV. That's the only thing anybody cares about in that particular space is ISV. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that some of my forum questions, people are starting to answer them and stuff. So I just got another response this morning on
Good.
anyone, using it, particularly AppSource for marketing. Hey, I don't know if you've seen this document. I just chucked it up into the chat there on YouTube.
Let me see. Oh, yes, this one. It's definitely been going around here, some comments. This is, this
So
started with,
specifically the terminology updates, right? For Project Oakdale, which of course is now, they're saying effective November, it applies, it's going to be rolled into all of CDS.
when they had data flex out there for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
they were saying that these terms would be applicable just to data flex
Yeah.
because they felt that data flex was kind of targeting more of that citizen developer and more on the citizen side, and that
Yep.
they're more apt to know table, column, and row because that's more traditional database nomenclature than the stuff that Dynamics has kind of created its own. And I think
Yeah.
Salesforce calls entities objects, and so
Yeah.
people have their different words. But at the end of the day, tables, columns, and rows, pretty generic. And I think it was, if it was that way from the beginning, it wouldn't be an issue.
No.
But suddenly making
It's
this
only
change.
the old hands, right, is getting used to this new terminology. But I mean, you have a look at that list. Legacy term is entity or entities is now table and tables, which if you come from pre-Dynamics days, that's how you would refer to a table, a database, right? Even an Excel spreadsheet still called a table. Makes sense. Fields and rows, of course, columns or columns.
It doesn't make sense though, because when you look at a typical table in a database,
yeah,
that table can't do nearly as much as an entity in Dynamics.
I get that.
Platform. I mean, I think at its core, it is a table, but it's like a table on steroids when you look at all the capabilities around what you can do with an entity, far more than you could just do with a SQL table. It's kind of like,
So why don't you propose that instead of just calling it tables, you go back to the team and can we call it tables on steroids?
Super tables.
Super table.
Yeah,
this exactly. I'm super excited tables. Maybe it would work.
Now, I don't know if we've got as many differences in the fields as we do traditional database columns formatting, but there's still some things around fields probably unique to Dynamics. When I think of tables, column, and rows, I'm thinking of just like a standard, frankly, an Excel spreadsheet is what they're trying to get to for people, right? You got your table, and you got your columns are your fields, and your rows are your records. They're trying to get us over to Excel terminology.
There you go. What about power tables?
Power tables.
Hans and Miranda both suggested those.
There we go.
As options for it. Yeah, 2 options, of course, changing to yes. The legacy term was 2 options. Now it's yes or no. Of course, some people have already said, well, what if I want yes and poop as the the second option? It's a bit restrictive.
Yeah, I think,
Oak,
yeah,
oak tables.
I think if they were going to do it this way, they should have called it 2 options and then put like A, B. So, people would realize you could be anything instead of yes, no. Sounds like that's all it is, the yes, no field. They probably should have said something like A, B,
Yeah.
or
1-0
asterisk slash asterisk, something, something to
on
let
off.
people know that it could be something more than that.
Yeah. And option sets are all going away. Pick lists are all going away, and they're now choices or a choice.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you
It
see
sounds a
on.
bit funny though. We've known what option sets are for so long, and now we're like, what type of field are you going to use? I'm going to use a choices field. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a choice.
exactly. Yeah.
It sounds as in, and of course that's a data type, to those fields. So interesting. And they said from November 2020, they're going to progressively update things. As I hear, there's still APIs and whatnot to update. But yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, the important thing for developers to know, and this could be temporary too, I don't know, is that that note there in the purple that this is just public marketing terminology.
Yeah.
They're not going to change anything in the API messages, common data service, web server, any of this stuff that, because could you imagine having to go back in now and change, change code to change the word attribute to column or something throughout?
Yeah.
I mean, that would just be insane. So it's funny.
Hey,
They built this pile over so many years, and now they want to change things, but they can't really change it. So they slap some lipstick on the front of it, so it'll look different out front, but in the back, it's still going to be the same old crap. Same old stuff.
Here's the
It's
problem.
just going to lead to confusion. Now
Exactly.
it's not like we're going to start calling them tables because
The
they're
new
still
punter
called.
coming in is the one with the problem, right? The new punter joining are going to see something like create entity request, and they're going to go, "What's an entity?"
Yeah, or they're going to be reading blog posts from, like a lot of new people get they learn from blog posts, right? They're going to go do their searching and they're going to do a search for a PowerApps table and it's going to return nothing. because it'll be a while before there's anything, this terminology is in use, but even once it's in use, your professional developer community and anybody who's been working with the platform is going to continue to call them entities.
Yeah.
And all these citizens are going to call them tables, and people are going to think they're talking about 2 different things.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds classic. It just sounds classic Microsoft to me.
It's not easy though, right? I mean, the people that are working on all this tech now are not the people that were working on it 10 years ago, and I think there's an element of going,
the people that were working on it 10 years ago are still working on it.
You mean in the community, not inside Microsoft?
Oh yeah, well, true. Yeah,
I'm talking about Microsoft folks. There's very few Microsoft engineers that were anywhere near V1 or 1.2.
No, and that was it was a pretty small group because since Phillips came in, that group went from like 1,000 to 7,000 people. So there's 6,000 new people in that org over the past few years that don't have any of this legacy. They walked in and opened this can and looked at what was there, and that's what they've been working with, going forward.
Totally.
Can you
I mean,
imagine?
I can only think of a few people that were in the original that I consider original now.
Yeah, like who?
Matt Barber, and from very early on, maybe not original, but very early on. He wasn't about my second or third MVP event is where I first saw Matt come onto the scene because he had been from memory in Microsoft Consulting Services. So he was big in there and then came across. I think, I could be wrong, but that's just my memory there.
So you got to keep some guys like that around that know where the skeletons are buried.
Yeah, Richard Dickinson, he's another one that is still there. And then who's the guy that's on Docs now or on the APIs? I forget his name. There's only about 3 that I can remember from the original crowd.
No, and I'll bet those 3. I mean, we pepper them, Matt Barber frequently from the outside, but you got to figure he really gets peppered from the inside. I mean, he must. every 2 minutes, somebody must be coming to his door saying, "Hey, Matt, what did you guys do with, how did you guys figure this out back 4 years ago? Because we're having to redo it." And
Yeah.
he must have to explain over and over. I mean, he's got to have a tough job over there.
Yeah. You know, Shad MacArthur, actually, even though he hasn't been in Microsoft for that entire journey to when, you know, Portals was purchased off them, that business. But I think that he started still right down back around 1.2 days from the outside looking in, but he definitely, Shan, of anybody, absolutely pulled that thing apart. Hello, Megan. How are you? Referring to us as the bald guys.
You know, Shan had a pretty significant ISV solution that's ultimately become Microsoft Portals. So, and he had it for quite a while. So he would have to have understood that solution framework, you know, pretty well. And then basically that's what he's in charge of now internally is the whole solutioning system is his.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. I mean, it's good for us because we got somebody on the inside who has dealt with it from the outside for a very long time.
Yeah.
But he, like Matt, also likes to insist that this is how we designed this thing to work, and this is how you're supposed to do it. Dealing with a bunch of old codgers out here that are all like, you know, and if they think of people like Gus Gonzalez and folks like that, they're like, I don't care how we're supposed to do it. I'm going to keep doing it the old way because the new way is no good. Well, I don't know. The guys that are making it are saying this is the way to do it. I think you defy them at your own peril.
Yeah. Have you built an app yet on Project Oakdale?
I have not. You know, I was in the pilot. I think I told you that, and they set that pilot up with like 4 calls a week.
Yeah,
so
you said that.
It was a little bit too much, and frankly, I kind of lost interest because there was just too much of it. I think if they'd have had a broader cadence, maybe, but you know, we'll see. I think that it's another citizen developer angle, right? It's taking. You know, PowerApps was intended for citizens, but it's still a little complicated. And, you know, Oakdale is kind of like PowerApps Lite. I mean, PowerApps is Dynamics Lite and Oakdale is PowerApps Lite. So they're really trying to skinny this thing up into something that even more people, well, I think they're trying to skinny it up into something that the people they thought would be successful with PowerApps could be successful with.
Yeah.
You know, because we've said this before, Microsoft's idea of easy is not the world's idea of easy.
Yeah.
And I think
there's a migration path there. Can you upgrade right now an Oakdale environment version of CDS to full-blown CDS? Or is that just proposed still?
No, I think you can because that's part of their goal.
Yeah, I know it's their goal. Absolutely, right?
Part of their plan is, you know, to take Oakdale and go build yourself a nice little list in Teams. And then when that list gets big and you want to start, you know, referencing other things in that list, or it starts getting maybe a little relational, then suddenly, hey, you want a CDS under that? You want, you know, you want some more capabilities, and that's I think what their goal is that those folks are going to upgrade.
Yeah.
What I don't think they've got right now is parity between Oakdale in Teams and CDS in Teams.
Oh, no, and I don't think they will go for parity. The whole idea is it's meant to be a light version, right? It's like
but what I mean is it's completely different. You know,
right.
A light version that you can upgrade, you would think, all right, I'm going to go flip an upgrade switch, and this will suddenly have much more power and capability, not that I suddenly have to do everything completely differently. So it definitely isn't a smooth upgrade, you know. But I mean, they don't even have an upgrade yet for vanilla CDS to the first party apps either. And
but from inside, as in like, you know, the Oakdale app that I span up this week, I was then able, like, it take you straight into the canvas editing experience.
Yep.
And allowed you to, I mean, that was just consistent. It's because it's just set the data sources at light version of CDS, right? So I don't think it'd be too big a hop then to go to full production CDS. Well, not saying Oakdale's not production, but you know.
Maybe it's just my background and what I'm familiar with, but to me, model driven is significantly simpler than Canvas. I realize you get
background. It's your background.
Yeah, I mean, I realize you get that pixel control, but frankly, that's just another level of complexity, is that pixel control to have the thing look good.
I was training a bunch of people earlier today in the wee hours this morning, and we went through and built out a Canvas app with them. And and I've taught this course 3 or 4 times now, and the most common question I get is, how do you learn all the formulas?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's how quickly Canvas starts to get complex the minute you jump in that formula bar. And I mean, that formula bar's always been there in, you know, in Excel and stuff. And of course, the power users learn what all those formulas can do and the power of them. Yep. But I think if you're going to be proficient in Canvas apps, you need to become proficient in formulas.
I think it's going to take the same path as Excel. You know, there's a ton of people out there that could create a little table in Excel and sum up the values at the bottom. They can multiply column A times column D and put it in column C. They can do all that really simple, straight up mathematical stuff in Excel, and they think they're Excel users.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they go click up in that header of the formulas and they see, you know, what, 8 categories of formulas with like 50 of them under each one.
Yeah.
And they just have no clue how powerful that application is. And
exactly.
You know, the first time they learn about things like VLOOKUPs or pivot tables, they're just like kind of blown away. Yep. And I think Canvas is similar. I think to do the easy stuff is easy. To do the next level of stuff is not as easy. And it can certainly, the water can get really deep by the end of it, you know?
Yeah, and Mandra's right. The expressions, same deal in flow, right? If you want to get good at writing flows, you got to get really good at expressions. And you know, I mean, if you're consulting in this area, if you're doing them all the time, you really do need to dedicate time to really learning all the possibilities that sit there.
Yeah, yeah. Patty pointing out that basically nothing comes out of the box with Oakdale. You know, it's a super.
That's true.
It's as simple as Microsoft is going to make it, but there just isn't going to be even a starting point there. You know, at least with CDS, you're getting, well, frankly, what you're getting in CDS.
You get core.
Well, what you're getting in CDS is the leftover stuff from Dynamics that they just didn't pull out. Right.
On purpose, because they said every app will need, you know, contacts and accounts and activities like email and blah, blah, blah.
Yep. You know, I was telling you before, we're going through a pretty significant translation exercise on Rapid Starts. So we made it free. I want to make sure as many people can get it as they can.
How many people are you got using Rapid Start now, roundabout?
It's about 16,800, something like that at last count. Yeah, there's quite a few people using it.
Yeah, quite a few people.
And that's starting to ramp up significantly now that it's free, of course. That makes a big difference. And people are still discovering that. Now we had a partner call today with you know, some partners who were wanting to use it. And basically I was just showing them first what it does, but also showing them how to hide our cross-sell, upsell information. Because we got a welcome page that hits the user when they first log in, talking about us. I'm teaching these partners how to turn off our billboard. We've got a documentation dashboard in there that has some cross-sell, upsell. So I'm showing them where to go to uncheck the box to hide that. Because I mean, it wouldn't be a good experience for partners to suggest their customer use this neat little free application and then suddenly lose their customer to us.
Yeah,
that's not a goal.
Promote it, right?
Yeah, that's not a goal. I mean, we won't make any money on these people or these unless these partners end up underwater and need some help. But you know what? We'll get feedback. We'll get feedback to make the product better, and that's fine. And maybe it ends up being another MVP contribution.
Yeah.
I'll have to figure out some things. I'll have to figure out things that I can do that I can actually charge people for, because I seem to have a whole list of things I can do for free.
Hey, I just chuck a link there into chat. This guy James Brentley out of Scotland. He was he was messaging me, and we're talking about on November the 1st, Microsoft started to remove the capability to deploy new tier 1 environments in D365 Finance and SCM. And so unless you're an Azure expert and can do the stuff yourself, so they're offering this at the same cost that Microsoft was, this ability to do the same thing. So anybody in that space, it's received, it seems, a heap of traction, a lot of comments being made on LinkedIn about it. And so, yeah, just some options, I suppose, for customers are wondering what they're doing in that world.
So what this guy's talking about, basically going back to a hosted model?
It looks like that. We'll apply, yeah, it looks like that, right? As in for certain situations, not all. Yeah. It's like, it's partner hosted kind of thing by the looks. Yeah. And it's not in the C side, it's in that finance and upside of things.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's still a lot of partners out there that are doing partner hosted deployments.
I always struck, like George Dombinski used to do a lot of that, and I thought he pulled out of it all. I haven't seen any partners in the last 5-6 years do it, so it's not been on my radar.
No, I don't think we see a lot of people selling them today, because unless you're in.
How do you compete against Microsoft price point?
FUD.
Make money.
FUD.
Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Scare customers into thinking Microsoft's going to be snooping your data, or
which
whatever.
Is ridiculous.
All the hackers are going to go after Microsoft. They're not going to chase us. Fear.
Good luck.
Yeah. FUD. Yeah. I mean, there's some things you can do to compete with Microsoft in their own space. I mean, we're doing it with the Rapid Start. I mean, we're going straight after their sales app, in particular their Sales Pro app, which they think is an SMB product, which isn't at all. And frankly, we've built a better application for SMB in particular for free than the one they charge $65 for. So you can compete against the mothership using their own tools, interestingly enough. And a lot of ISVs, even that had built, elaborate things on the platform, for vertical solutions, they tend to compete directly with Microsoft, really trying to pull them off to as little of the Microsoft stuff as they can. It's
but you've gone and used a new product construct, which is, internally Microsoft can be very slow in that transition themselves. In fact, it's not just Microsoft. At a bunch of the hackathons I've been at, and I've seen consultants come and get involved in those hackathons that work for partners and stuff. And their starting point of coming up with solving a business problem is, which Dynamics app will I use? That's the baseline to build their tailoring on. They don't come from a baseline of CDS. Why don't I start at CDS, build on top? They actually go, no, I'll take CDS plus a Dynamics app, then I'll build on top. What you did was go, hang on, I'm going to take CDS and build something that competes with Dynamics at a much lower price point. Smart move.
Well, I mean, they opened the door. And if you go back a couple of years to one of my first or earlier calls with Charles LaManna, he had said that, by releasing the PowerApps, and this was at $40 at the time.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about cannibalization. I think I even talked to him again about it when they released a $10 pass about cannibalization. And on the one side, he was saying, well, we feel comfortable that the value of our first party apps will hold their own. But on the other side, he said that, if we sell 10 times as many $10 SKUs as we did $95 SKUs, we're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So it really was more of a scale play.
And also, it's a bit of a different customer in a way, right? Is that if you've got a customer like, if you've got a customer that has 20,000 employees, when you go to Microsoft and go, listen, I want Dynamics 365 sales, they don't pay RRP for 20,000 employees.
No, they don't.
Right?
They're going straight to an EA, and that's all negotiated. And
I've seen the price, honestly, I've seen the price for a license that was, let's say, $65 in market go sub $10 a license.
Yeah, if you got if it's a logo, they'd like to have a lot of seats, potential for, this can pull in Azure, this can pull in some other services. They're going to, down the road, they're going to be a big AI user. And if Salesforce is also knocking on the other side of that door, oh yeah, they'll drop their pants to get those deals.
They sell it as a loss leader, right? It gets them into the account, land and expand. They can grow out there, and they don't mind taking a hit here because they're going to make it somewhere else. And consumption's a big play, right? Consumption's a powerful story.
And I don't know if it even is a loss leader when you multiply that times 20,000 users.
Yeah.
And if you've got an organization with 20,000 users, that's the percentage of use of that is way lower than an organization with 10 users. An organization with 10 users, every one of those 10 people, because they're focused on, I'm only going to get a license to the people who need it. I'm going to get these 10 people, and those 10 people are using it all day, every day. Otherwise they didn't buy that license. But you get into 20,000, that's just like, we'll just buy a license for everybody. But not everybody's going to use it or use it very much. So I don't know that it's necessarily even a loss leader for them, especially if it can pull in, because these things we know from many years of trying to get people to move off of Salesforce. Not easy to do.
Yeah.
People get business processes, they get everything wrapped around an application. They've got training, they got a bunch of people that know how to use it, know how to customize it. You come walking in the door saying, hey, we got something for $10 less. Yeah, you're not getting anywhere. It takes some pretty big reason for somebody to move off of one of these platforms. Well, that works the same for Microsoft. They can get Dynamics in there, and they can get 20,000 users using it. And they can start, spreading those tentacles out a little bit. They'll be pushing them for AI. They'll be pushing them for all this other stuff, because the more, like you say, the usage they get out of that thing, the less likely it is that they're going to leave. And it almost doesn't even matter how good the deal is. I mean, there's customers out there using Salesforce today, paying $100 plus per license, that aren't doing anything special or unusual with Salesforce that frankly they couldn't do on freaking RapidStart. They can do the same thing they're doing on RapidStart for $10 a user. But still, the idea of just changing, and the other thing we've seen, which is interesting with the $10 license, because we've got a lot of customers that we've looked at and said, hey, let's move you down. You've been paying for this big license, and if we do a little fiddling here, a little fiddling there, we think we can get you off that heavy license and drop you down to the $40 license, and maybe put a bunch of people on 10. And I've had multiple customers tell me, well, let's just go to 40. I'm like, why wouldn't you just go all the way to 10? Why wouldn't you save 75% more? I don't know if they feel like 40 is enough of a savings, or if it's for $10, there must be something wrong. It must not be powerful enough for our needs. If we've been paying over 100, and there's no way we could drop down to 10 and be able to do the same thing. And it's just surprising how many of them actually could. And we'll see, because we've got one we're working with right now that comes to mind that's got, I don't know, a couple hundred users. And we've already dropped almost all of them down to the $40 license, and a handful of them are on the
$10, yeah.
That's as much of a risk as this customer wanted to take. Well, there wasn't any risk. Those 10 people are doing the exact same thing as all the rest of the people every day, all day. They're accomplishing the exact same goal. So I expect it'll be a two-step thing with some of these companies. Once they realize that Bob over there on a $10 license is doing the exact thing Sally's doing on a 40, and they're going to move Sally onto a $10 license. So it'll be interesting to see. This is the risk that Microsoft took when they launched those platform licenses, was that, and this is straight up cannibalization of their first party app. These people were paying $95 a month, and they had no option, and were going to pay it indefinitely. There was, it was sticky. It wasn't going anywhere. Salesforce couldn't get them out. They weren't going anywhere. And Microsoft launched this $10 license, and suddenly opened a door. And some partners are more motivated than others to push their clients to that, but I want to push them all to that. I mean,
yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
As a
Hey,
partner,
have you had a chance to play with Power Automate Desktop?
no, I've not. I saw it came out.
So I built the other day I used it to scrape data off a website.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it goes up, it opens the web browser with the URL of my choice. I had it record the fields on the form. I had it inject data into it. It then brought back the search results. I then harvested those search results into an Excel spreadsheet off it, opened the spreadsheet, found the first available row, wrote it in there, closed the spreadsheet, saved it, all just sort of one single click, about like 30 steps.
Wow. So how many total penis enlargement companies did you find?
About 56. No, but you can see in so many industries.
That's the RPA. That's the RPA. Is that the new company they bought being manifest as that desktop app?
Yeah.
What was that company called again?
From Italy. Win Automation, was it? Win Automation.
So they were the desktop app?
Yeah, I've got that CEO coming on a podcast soon, the former owner of it in Italy. Cool. Yeah, so I've got
say how much they paid him.
I've already had a conversation with him, and as in to set up the podcast, so it's going to be quite interesting. But like they've been going 15 years, and we're dominating in that space. So, Microsoft got a lot of bang for buck with that acquisition.
Yeah.
I mean, the desktop client is pretty cool, and it works with a website or with any type of existing app. That's on top of the fact that if there was 400 odd API connectors that came with it from memory, and then you start feeding AI into the mix. It's a pretty powerful story. I can see why Microsoft went out and acquired like this.
Well, that's just the technology side. This guy's been around, you say 15 years. So yeah. he had a lot of customers.
A lot of customers.
And these are the customers that were maybe Salesforce customers, Oracle customers, other product customers who were using his tool. So, Microsoft just got themselves wired into a whole bunch of new customers that, this tool is ultimately going to be pointed directly at the Power Platform. And people are going to discover all the other things in Power Platform. And, so there's a customer value there that they picked up in addition to the technology.
Yeah. I was talking to some sellers in our space the other day, and they were saying that even customers that are currently on other type of technology, RPA type technologies, are all looking to move to Microsoft because the investment they've seen in Power Automate, PowerApps and stuff over the last 3 years, they know Microsoft is now fully committed to this space. Microsoft are not walking away. I don't know if you remember back in the early days, there was a time in Dynamics, maybe 8 years ago, where it was always the rumor that Dynamics was going to be split off and sold. It was going to be, shot through. It wasn't a core business strength of Microsoft. That conversation doesn't exist anymore. Nobody's second guessing biz apps, 30 odd applications now in the suite of products. There's, $3.2 billion of revenue a year. There's no talk about split off. And this is on a trajectory that's continuing to grow. When I see double-digit growths per quarter and you're in the billion-dollar field, you can see how growth happens rapidly for these companies, for Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google. It's pretty big numbers.
Yeah, that rumor floated around again when the rumors about the Salesforce acquisition were happening. Remember a few years back when there was a rumor of Microsoft buying or looking at buying Salesforce, and here you got all these Dynamics engineers, Dynamics partners, everybody on the Dynamics side thinking, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because you can imagine the ramifications. Salesforce, vastly larger customer base on Salesforce than Dynamics. There's no way they'd buy Salesforce and trash it and just move everybody to Dynamics. No. If they bought Salesforce, Dynamics was going to be the one that was going to be in the bullseye.
That's it.
Because they weren't going to carry two.
Yeah, and so I wonder what happened, because Satya was doing that deal, right, to start with, when I think Benioff came back with some ridiculous amount, twice as much as what they paid for LinkedIn, and wanted 50% shares of Microsoft or some shit like this. And of
So the
course,
interesting thing is, I don't think Microsoft ever actually acknowledged that they were in pursuit of that.
is that right?
Yeah,
I thought
I
there
think
were articles to that effect.
there were articles to that effect, but nobody from Microsoft was quoted in those articles. It was
I see what
all,
you're saying. All from Salesforce side.
well, my opinion or my thought at the time was, this is Benioff feeding some of these stories
Yeah.
to boost his stock price, you know? Uh, so who knows? Microsoft may have been looking at it. They may have never looked at it at all. They've never looked at it at all. And I wouldn't put it past Benioff. He's a master salesman.
Yeah.
He's a philanthropic guy now, but he wasn't always a philanthropic guy.
No.
He's a ruthless salesman at the core. You go back and read some of the stories of him and Oracle and the exit and the stuff he had with who's the Oracle guy? The other big name out there.
Who, Larry Ellison?
Yeah, Larry Ellison. Yeah, a couple of big egos, and there was some pretty ruthless stuff going on back in the day.
Yeah, look, this quick search here from CNET, which is Microsoft tried to acquire Salesforce for 55 billion, report says.
Back in 2015.
Yeah, that was it. I noticed that in the whole backwards and forwards with the elections last week, that Jeff Bezos sold off $2 billion worth of stocks in the fluctuation with the share market.
Yeah, I think that if you own a big company like that and it's making a shit ton of money, I mean, why wouldn't you go every now and then and just cash out? But it almost seems like no matter when you would go cash out, it's going to coincide with something that's going to make it look like, oh God, he's getting out. Everybody better get out. It's like there's no good time to scrape some money off the table into your pocket when you're at that position with that. Everybody jump at a conclusion that something must be up. And man, who knows? It could be, but
$1 billion is probably chump change to a trillionaire, right?
Yeah.
It's all horses for courses and different appetite sizing. I mean, I tell you, every time they sell, these big numbers, I bet you, whether it's to defer, there's going to be tax implications. There's going to be so many different things in play for them to make these decisions. And as you say, it could have been decided way before the state that it was gearing towards it, and a trigger was hit and sell.
I've clicked through about 3 different links from that one you just sent, leading to other sources of this information.
Yeah.
Nobody from Microsoft.
Nobody from, yeah.
No,
you're right.
According to people close to the talks. What the fuck is that?
The old leakers.
This could very well have all been a Benioff, feeding a misinformation. It's fake news. It could have been fake news.
Before we knew that term.
Yeah, his shares climbed on the conversation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't see much of Salesforce these days in anything. I know a few people at work at Salesforce. I'm more in London, just from my time there, but I don't see them anywhere near like I did, I don't know, 10 years ago, I feel.
Well, you were in a different position 10 years ago too. You were out talking to customers, generating
all the time. Yeah.
Business.
Valid.
And, you're in a little different spot right now.
I think that Microsoft's competing on many more faces though than just Salesforce.
Yeah.
The marketing product, D365 marketing. I mean, I was a critic at the start, but boy, it's becoming much more robust all the time.
Yeah. It would, just like anything, right? I mean, they launch this stuff too early. Don't get enough feedback. They call it GA. And then everybody struggles with it for 2 years, fixing all the things that are wrong with it. And then it starts actually catching a little bit of groove. You know, we had a marketing application built by a company that didn't know shit about marketing. Didn't bring in anybody that knew shit about marketing. I mean, it was Keyshawn that built that thing, that started that thing.
He's gone to Salesforce, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, but he didn't know jack shit about marketing.
No.
So their idea of how to build a marketing app was, let's go look at the other marketing apps out there and copy it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you don't understand why something is being done, then just copying what they're doing is kind of pointless. And I think that's what they ended up doing. I still don't know if they've got any marketing people involved in the marketing app, but I think what they do have is they have enough marketing people out there using the marketing app that are giving them
that
feedback.
They're getting the feedback
of what the problem.
But you know, some of this new stuff around, you know, the world's changed, of course, with COVID and how Teams has been used. And, you know, what did that, now you just want it fully integrated into Teams, you know, as in from a campaign management point of view and setting up virtual meetings and stuff or virtual events. I think it seems to be going ahead in that space so much more, and then getting much more serious with the customer insight side of things, of that whole, you know, customer journey mapping, and then starting to get into the area of funnels and really understanding what customers' journeys are across multiple environments, not just web, but, you know, FPOS systems and things like that. I think Microsoft are really creating a good story.
I did a webinar today for partners that want to use Rapid Start in their own business. And this is the second attempt. I first had scheduled this a week ago and was going to use Teams live events. And, you know, I created the event. It was all fine, and sent out the invites. It was all fine. And then we went to go do the event. It felt like I was in a room by myself. I had no sensation that there was anybody there. And as soon as I went and shared my screen, the whole control panel for the events minimized.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, I was completely lost then. I couldn't even tell if what I was broadcasting was going out live. I couldn't tell anything that was going on. So I just right 10 minutes into the webcast, I said, look, guys, I'm gonna have to pull the plug on this because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Let's reschedule and let me go learn. Well, it turns out that it does minimize. I think maybe it's assuming that you're on a single monitor.
Yeah. Well, no, if you have multiple monitors, like I will often have 3 different views up at any time in when I'm in the Teams environment. So I've got chat happening over here on one screen. I can see the people's details, and then I'm presenting off the one screen, which is what you've done. You've hit minimize and then lost all that because it's all minimized in your taskbar, where you can drag that up to another screen.
Yeah, that's what I ended up doing. I found it minimized and popped it back up. But minimizing by default, I think, is probably a behavior of assuming a single monitor.
Right.
If you're going to share the screen, let's minimize this. You know?
And Teams doesn't really have that concept. I saw one big blessing coming out in Teams is this ability to sign into multiple organizations. I see. Is that due out in December? Did I see? That's going to be amazing for, you know, people that have 10 accounts with 10 different companies.
Well, the other thing they're doing is they're coming out with a way to create like an invitation landing page. Because right now you create a Teams live. If you create a Teams live event, all you have is a link to the event. You send that to people and they click on it, and, you know, they're a week early. So they got to remember or save it. So to be able to create those Teams invites, I literally had to go forward the Teams invitation to get the IC, the calendar file.
Yeah, ICS file. Yep.
And then create a sign up page on our website, completely separate. And when you sign up, it would take you to a landing page on the website. So thanks for signing up. Click this link, which would download the ICS file. So way too cumbersome for webinars. You know, where you don't know who's going to sign. It's one thing to send people an invitation, but it's another thing to, you know, have a webinar where you don't know who's signing up. So that's supposed to be coming also, is that ability. But even today, I was successful in maximizing the screen so I could see what the hell I was doing. I didn't really get any feedback. I mean, I wasn't, I mean, I just saw there was a number of attendees up at the top. I didn't see a list of, for some reason or another, I didn't see any Q&A. So, Vlad and I were saying that it really looks like it's kind of designed for two people. One person doing a webinar is going to struggle because as a presenter, it seemed like it was hiding stuff from me.
Yeah.
And
you do need, I mean, even like depending on the size of the event, you need somebody just to be like a moderator. Like I've been training folks at the moment, as I say, and sometimes there's, close to 100 people on the call. I can't, as a presenter, you can't answer all those questions that are coming in on the ding, right? You need someone else.
I couldn't even see them. It was almost as though
no.
Yeah, when I was showing my screen as a presenter, it decided, okay, since you're presenting, we don't want to bother you with this stuff. Like there's an assumption that there's someone else, but then as a presenter, you're not getting any feedback, any tactile response of what's going on. You're not even sure if people are, because there's no audio in Teams live events, right? You can't turn people on.
From the punter. Yeah, of course. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't even know if anybody can hear what you're saying.
I've never used a live event. I always just use standard Teams.
Yeah, well, events was designed for the webinar, so I thought I'd give it a try. And you certainly have full control over the presentation because nobody else can do shit because you can't even see or know they're there. But it was a weird sensation. I'd like to see that get a little better.
Did you see, I just posted another link that came out on the 9th of October, 24 new connectors released in October. And it's interesting when you look at some of these connectors, how Microsoft is really broadening the scope of things. I mean, one of them that I like there is the Azure SMS, the Azure communication service that you now can use.
So is that going up to Twilio?
Well, this is just another connector, right? I'm not saying you still can't use Twilio, but it's just another connector that's in your mix.
This competes with Twilio then, right?
Well, it's a connector, right? It's offering to another service. And if you look down, which I found interesting, is there's a PowerForm 7, which is, one of the world's most popular plugins in WordPress, is now connected to that. So that's interesting. So people theoretically, and I haven't drilled into it, but if you use PowerForm 7, which I might even be doing that on my website, it now lets you.
I think there was one called Contact 7. I wonder if they renamed it.
Maybe they did, but you imagine if that now plugs in and you're just using a one API call per form fill out. That's pretty attractive to folks, I'd say, as in getting data into their CDS.
Yeah, we have a customer we're working on right now that has a WordPress website, and they wanted leads to go into straight into their CRM. So at the time, and they didn't want to spend a ton of money. I said, how about this? How about we just throw a Microsoft form up there, capture the data, we'll use Power Automate to throw them in there. Great, works perfect. Their web designer doesn't like the way it looks. And you can't do much with Microsoft Forms. You can pick a color, but as far as fonts or spacing of the box, you don't have CSS. It kind of looks like what it looks like, and that's it. So they were really badgering him to do something different. And so I said, well, fine. Then, pick one of the the WordPress form solutions for which there isn't a connector. Looking through the connectors, here's one for Gravity, which is a big form solution for WordPress.
Gravity
and
forms.
I forwarded that link, said, here's one I just found looking, but let me do some research. All right, well, I do some research, and the first research I do, because it said right on it, the official, but it wasn't from Gravity. So I thought, okay, well, I guess they must have some ISV got approval from Gravity, but I thought, I want to. So I sent an email to Gravity, say, hey, I just want to double check this connector's here. It's got your name on it. Says it's the official. I don't want to get down a path and have some issue. And so we don't know nothing about that company or nothing about that connector. Nothing to do with us. Of course, in the meantime, the customer bought the connector, sends us the credentials. He's all chomping at the bit to move on it. Wow. But it got me wondering because that was one of the things about AppSource connectors in particular, because there were people that were looking around at things where there weren't connectors, like QuickBooks, very popular accounting software, no connector, and people were saying, "Hey, we'll build a connector, and Microsoft said, "Well, in order to publish a connector, you have to own the API."
Yep.
Obviously, if you don't own QuickBooks API, what that means, the only one that can publish is QuickBooks.
Yep.
So I don't know if these people had lied about who they were or what the deal was, because there are some third parties that have built some connectors that were authorized by the owner of the API.
Mm-hmm.
The owner of the API hired them specifically to build that connector for them. But it doesn't seem to be the case with this particular one. It makes me wonder how many there are. And then, old George Dubinsky had the idea that he would build an API to an API.
Okay.
So take QuickBooks, for example. He would take and, go into Azure or something, build his own API that connected to QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
But the connector that went into Power Automate was to his API, which he owned.
Yep.
So it's like, hey, I own this API. It's my API. So that was and that was kind of following the letter of the law of their rules, even though his API was turning around and spitting out the connection to the other API. So I don't know if you ever did anything with that or not, but interesting how people trying to bounce around that a little bit.
I see officially there's now just on Microsoft Docs, 325 connectors are now available out there.
I wonder if they dropped some, because that number sounds, they've been adding, but that number sounds similar to what it's been for a while. So maybe they've been dropping some as well.
Well, here's the thing. There's 325 here, but then with Power Automate Desktop, I think that had over 400 in it by itself.
That probably came with
the acquisition.
Maybe. Yeah.
So
those are probably still different technology stacks at this point. I would think those connectors are specific to that RPA solution.
Totally. But that ultimately RPA with a bit of glue and chewing gum, you can probably stick that into into a flow.
Yeah, I would think that ultimately they're going to want those two things to come together.
Yeah.
So before we go, we should probably let people know we will not be here next week. We had planned to be here next week, but they've
you're unpacked, and I've got a consulting gig on next week.
Yeah, they've restarted the ISV pack. So again, any ISVs out there, that's good news, because that was one of the first things Googs did, was get rid of the ISV pack because he didn't really want opinions. And one of the good things Toby Bowers has done is he's reconstituting the ISV pack, and the first meetings are next week. It'll be three full days of, if it's how it used to be in person, it'd be 3 full days of Microsoft people pitching to about, I think there's probably 20 or 25 of us, the latest and greatest stuff, and wanting feedback, wanting specifically be told this sucks and here's why.
Yeah.
It was one of the most productive things I'd ever done was PAC, as far as seeing a result in the product come out from conversations that were had in PAC. Much more productive than MVPs, which, MVPs have a loud voice, but PAC seemed to get even more action. MVPs tend to, when we talked about this before, they'll have a PGI with MVPs to announce some things to get our opinions on something that is already baked and ready to go out the door, that they're not going to change. It's like, we just want to see how badly this is going to land when we launch it next week. But, and PAC, we would hear about stuff a year in advance, way in advance. So early stuff. So it should be a fun few days, but I will miss next week, and you've got an appointment. So it'll be 2 weeks from now before we're back. And
and that's the last one for the year that we're doing, right? It's the end of the last week in November, and then we're not back till February. The first week of February, we'll be back on deck. So we're going to take a 2-month hiatus.
You're going to be breastfeeding, aren't you?
Yep. I got
Yeah.
a baby arriving in 2 to 3 weeks, all going well. So, yeah, so it allows me to settle into that routine as well. And then, yeah, so week after next, our last one for the year. And I think, did you say at the start you're coming with Santa hat or gnome hats or something like that?
I think I said at the start, I'm doing no such thing.
I
But
think you
fully
said
expect,
fuck off, didn't you? I think that's what you said to me.
but fully expect you to. And thanks, Dan, about the effort there on ISB Connected. Help us spread the word. The more people we can get in there talking,
Yeah.
the more value it has to all of us, including myself, because I want to use it as my personal answer tool for my own
But there's
personal
70
problem.
odd verified members in there now, which is pretty good going, pretty quick.
Yeah, and it's starting to pick up. You know, we put a little effort into it, like everything. This show, we could have a lot more people following if we actually put the slightest bit of effort into promoting it. But we blurred out a tweet about 10 minutes before the show.
That's the maximum promotion, isn't it?
That's the extent of our marketing effort. That wouldn't be as fun if we had too many people. Then maybe we'd feel like we had to be careful what we said.
Yeah. Nah. All righty, Steve.
All right, guys. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks.